Feeling so stuck in my head that I forget just about everything my therapist said. Maybe I'm self-helpless.
Hey everyone, welcome to Self-Helpless, where science, spirituality, and sustainability are brunch buddies. I'm Delanie Fischer, and details about today's topic can be found in the episode description. Returning listeners, if an episode of Self-Helpless has supported you in some way, a quick 5-star rating or review, if you haven't left one already, honestly keeps this indie podcast alive amidst the big old budget behemoths out there. So thank you for feeding the algorithm a little treat for me. Ad-free episodes are now on Patreon at patreon.com/selfhelpless, and info about some free goodies will be shared in the outro. Okay, it's podcast time. What did your life look like in your 20s, 30s, professionally, personally, whatever you'd like to share? And what does your life and work look like now? And then we'll, of course, get into the details.
I think my life looked a lot like anybody else, any woman in their 20s and 30s with kids and a career. That part of my life is kind of a blur. Which I have 3 kids. 2 of them are younger, 11 and 14, and they're obviously still at home. And then I have one that's all grown up. That I raised in my 20s and my 30s because I had him when I was 17. So,
Wow.
there's 21 years between my first one and my second one. So there's
Wow.
quite a gap there. But
Yeah.
my 20s and 30s, I was just drinking from a fire hose, trying to survive life, being a mom, being a full-time career-oriented person as well. I was a corporate investigator for 26 years.
Wow.
And that kept me very busy. I was gone a lot. And so again, just kind of a blur. Trying to keep up with being a mom and trying to pursue what I think my generation was raised to believe, was success, which is climb the ladder and grind and work as hard as you can and be loyal to company and, all that you're going to work for somebody for 30, 40 years and then you're going to retire and live this happy life. I figured out that was bullshit, but fast forward into my 40s, and I quit I got burnt out. I had young babies. They were little then, my 2 girls. And I was just, I looked back at how I raised my son and how much I was gone. And I was still in a very, dangerous job. And I was like, you know what? I'm burnt out. I'm tired. I think I was also hitting perimenopause at that phase of life, but didn't know that I was in perimenopause. It was around it'd be 10 years this year. So I was 42, about to be 43 when I quit my job. But I did. I finally worked up the courage to quit. And I told myself I was going to start a business. I had no idea what I was doing. I never had any identity outside of mom or investigator. So I was like, I'm going to start a business, even though I didn't know what that business was going to be. And so I did. I quit my job 10 years ago and started. Now I own several businesses, but I left that job thinking, I've got a year's worth of savings. And if I can't figure out what I'm going to do with my life, then I'll go back to work. And thankfully, I didn't have to go back to work. So what does my life look like now? I still drink from a fire hose pretty much all day, every day. But I do drink from my own hose now, not somebody else's.
I love it.
I own a skincare company called Wholesome Hippie. I own a boutique, an online boutique. I also have a very large social media presence. So that's kind of turned into a business. That was accidental. I didn't set out intending to be some big content creator, but now I am. I'm also a content creator with over 6 million followers. I'm on tour. I'm most recent that I can add to my resume is stand-up comedian, which I've never been a stand-up comic in my life. And so at 52, that was not on my bingo card or my bucket list, but here I am. Now I have to say I'm also a comedian because I'm on tour with some other people and we're doing stand-up comedy. And anyway, life is crazy managing 2 teenage girls while I'm in menopause.
That sounds fun.
Puberty versus menopause, and then running a few businesses and social media and being on tour. I'm just, I don't have a lot of free time, but I make it work.
What a significant transition to make in your 40s, you said, right? When you left that longtime career of yours for the complete unknown, basically. Was there a certain moment where you hit a wall and realized I cannot do this anymore? Or did you feel like it was more of an evolution of that feeling?
It was a little bit of both, to be honest. I had kind of been burning out for a while. That kind of a job will burn you out anyway. And so I found myself in my 20s and 30s, I worked for several companies because I would get to where I started feeling burnout. And then I would go take an investigator job with another company. And then you feel kind of rejuvenated and refreshed. And you're like, oh, okay. I have a new company and a new set of, rules to follow. And that kept me alive for the 26 years. I was able to move and I progressed my career as I did that, which is what you're supposed to do, right? Like I figured out pretty early on that loyalty thing. My first job as an investigator, I spent 10 years in that job. And then they just one day came in the day after Christmas and eliminated all of us. And I had, this idea that I was going to work for them for a really long time. That's the bill of goods I had been sold by my parents, is that's what you're supposed to do. You're loyal and they'll be loyal to you. And I figured out, that was not the case. And so I had to start over not because I wanted to, but because I had to. And so that slowly, started to help, reveal to me that moving companies was also beneficial to me financially. I could increase my salary, I had more experience, et cetera. But it also, if I look back and I'm honest with myself, it was the way that I kept myself alive doing that job for as long as I did. It would breathe life into me when I started feeling burnout or tired. And so in the end, I did finally hit a wall where I just couldn't. That didn't work anymore. That was like, okay, it's the same no matter if you do it enough where you're like, it's the same thing everywhere. You're literally just putting a Band-Aid on the problem, and then eventually it's going to become a problem again. And so, because the job is demanding and it's exhausting and it's dangerous and it just weighs on you mentally, there's a lot of stress. And so I did finally hit a wall. I hit a point where every day getting up was exhausting. Getting out of bed, it just was exhausting. The alarm would go off, you snooze, you snooze, you snooze. You just have to drag yourself out of bed. And I was like, that was the first. Then the second was going to the office. And I remember pulling into the parking garage every day and feeling like I was driving into a prison. That the garage door would close behind me and it just felt like I was being closed into this prison. And I realized it was not good for the company and it wasn't good for me. I just finally hit that wall where I wrote my resignation letter a few months prior to actually quitting because I was scared. I was literally scared to death at quitting a job without having one because I had never done that. That was another thing I had been taught was like, you never, well, not only be loyal, but if you leave a job, you got to have a job.
Right.
And I've been working since I was 14 years old. So I'd never been without employment. Even if I got laid off or something, I would just, I found a job very quickly. And that was scary. That was so scary of like, you're quitting a job and you don't have a job. Like, so I put that off for a while thinking I was going to change my mind or that maybe somehow it would feel better that I would, I'd just wake up one day and be excited about work again. And that didn't come. And then one day that resignation letter had been in my drawer for a while. Something, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was just today's the day. I'm quitting today. Again, no plan. I had zero plan other than I knew I had saved up enough money to get me by for a year. If I was tight and just really was frugal, I could live for a year and take care of my family. And then if I didn't figure out what I was going to do, or I couldn't figure out what to do, then I would go back to work. So I thankfully left in a way that I could have returned if I wanted to. Like I didn't burn any bridges. I had really strong relationships in the business and a lot of contact stuff. So I was like, I could go back if I had to, but I didn't want to. That was the difference. Is I was like, I didn't want to be a failure. At the thought that I was going to venture out on my own, something I dreamt about for decades. Like I had always thought, I'd always had these great ideas, right? But I never executed any of them. And because I was too busy working. And then when I finally had the time to focus on, okay, I've quit my job. What am I going to do? I had zero ideas.
Of course.
All of them were gone. Course. I am brilliant in the shower, let me tell you. But outside of that, I am just dumb. And so I was like, do I have to go stand in the shower to figure out what I'm going to do? And I would try to brainstorm in the shower, something about the water and me work. But I didn't know what I was going to do. And so the first few months, I really struggled because I wasn't used to being home with young kids. That was tricky. I wasn't used to that. I was used to being at work. And so being home with my small children all day, every day, being home with my spouse all day, every day, being home with myself, like just me, and not having something to do. I don't sit still well, so I didn't know how to busy myself. And I found myself a few months in thinking, God, I've made a huge mistake.
Wow.
I've made a huge mistake because it just took me a minute. What I look back on that time and realize is that I had to sort of decompress all of that, the way I had lived for so long and been wired to work and grind the way I did. I didn't know how to just sit still and just like be with myself and just try to enjoy life. And once I got past that, that I finally was like at ease and was able to relax a little bit, uh, things started to turn for me. You know, I started to have those ideas started to come, and I started my boutique first. And then about 5 years ago, I got into the skincare business and started a skincare company. So for the first 5 years, I mostly focused on my boutique and did a lot of live selling and, just trying something that was new and different than anything I had ever done before. And thankfully, knock on wood, this isn't real wood.
I'll knock for you on my end.
10 years in, and I just am not even slowing down. Like, I have got so many things that are in the pipeline and going well for me that I was like, I love that I am this year will be 10 years and I have not had to go back to work for someone else. Not that that's a
Yeah.
bad thing, but
Right.
I just love that I was all the ideas I had in my head, that I was only a mom and only an investigator, and those were the only two things I was good at. That here I am now at 52, about to be 53 next month, and still reinventing myself over and over again. Because social media has only been the last 3.5 years for me. Wholesome Hippie's been 5 years. The tour literally will be 1 year this Labor Day week. It wasn't even a tour back then, but anyway, it's a tour now.
Yeah.
And now writing a book and just so many other things on the horizon that I was like, I think if I had just quit 10 years sooner, what could I have accomplished? That's what goes through my mind.
It shows you how fluid identity can be if you allow it to be, right? If you don't see it as this fixed thing for your whole life. And I know so many people resonate with what you said, waking up in the morning with that feeling of maybe dread that is just always there. And you might not even realize it's always there until you get out of it. How do you wake up now? What when you wake up, what is the feeling and how does it differ to when you were waking up not wanting to go into work?
Oh, I wake up now. Well, number one, I get to wake up and get out of bed when I want. That's
Big
a really
difference.
except I have young kids, and that's not true because I have to drag myself out of bed to drag them out of bed to go
Sure.
to. But when they're not in school, like summer, like I get up when I want to, right? Unless I have something on my schedule that requires me to be somewhere. I wake up when I want to. I wake up more relaxed. I get out of bed excited to take on my day and look forward to like whatever adventures are going to come into my space that day because I have got a lot of irons in the fire. And some
Yeah.
days are still stressful. Don't get me wrong. I would never paint the picture that being an entrepreneur is not stressful. It just comes with a different
Right.
set of stressors than what you have in the corporate environment, right? Like I work for
Absolutely.
myself. I don't get paid unless I work. It's more about the idea of like when you work for somebody else, the check's coming, right? Like
Right.
it's every 2 weeks, your deposit's going to be there. You pray to God it's going to be there. Now, if I don't work, I don't get paid. And so that's a motivator. And then the challenges with being an entrepreneur and how they differ from being in the corporate world is not only are you your own boss, and I don't always have all the answers, right? So that there's
Mhm.
those struggles of like in the corporate world, you can go higher up. You usually can go up the chain if you need to solve problems. I have to be the problem solver. But also, that idea of like things that you don't think about when you're in the corporate space as much. Like when you're an entrepreneur, the stress comes from like you have to work to get paid, benefits, retirement,
Yeah.
vacation. All like there's no vacation. Even when I'm on vacation, I'm not really vacationing. You're all kind of always working, always on. And that was one of the things that being a corporate investigator was one of the things that drained me the most was I was on call 24/7,
Ooh.
365 days a year.
Ooh, yeah.
So my phone would ring all the time in the middle of the night or because I had, places that ran 24/7 operations. And so I never was off, if you will.
Yeah.
Even on vacations, that people would still, especially when text messages became a thing, they would text you the expectation you read your email whenever they send you an email, because you in the investigator space, if you get a lead, it's hot right now, right? Like you don't really
Yeah.
get to table it and come back to it later. So
Yeah.
there was that stress of like the 24-hour a day on call. But being an entrepreneur is really no different. You're kind of on all the time, and working. I'm always sort of in this space of working in some way, and that's on me that I have several businesses, but it works and it keeps me busy. But yeah, the stress of being an entrepreneur is different. So although it's stressful, it doesn't feel as heavy
Mm.
as the corporate world did for me. The bureaucratic, the politics, the red tape, all the
Yeah.
stuff that happens in a corporate environment. I don't have that kind of stress here. I don't have the politics of whether they like me or don't like me, whether something's gonna hold me back from a promotion, all that. I don't have any of that. And that kind of stress off of my plate I couldn't trade that for anything. I would
Right.
take all the stress of being an entrepreneur to not have to deal with all of that.
What you said about, within 10, like the first 10 years of your career, you learned that just because you're loyal to a company doesn't mean that they can't let you go, right? It doesn't mean it's a
Right.
two-way street. Are you grateful that you learned that kind of earlier on? Do you think that was part of maybe what gave you the courage to make that change? It kind of reminds me of that Jim Carrey quote a little bit, where if you can fail at something that you don't love, might as well try at something that you do love.
That's right.
Are you grateful for that lesson now looking back on it?
Absolutely. I mean, in the
Yeah,
moment, I look back on that moment and I remember how it was devastating to me. I
right.
had never been let go from a job, first of all. Now I was still young. I was like 20, I guess I was 29 or so at the time. So I was still pretty young. But I had never been let go from a job. So that was painful.
Yeah.
And I had to have that conversation with myself of like, but you didn't do anything. It's not like you screwed it up. Like they let
Right.
everybody go. The entire investigative team was eliminated. It was painful and it was difficult to process. However, it didn't take me long to realize that it was a gift. They actually had given me a gift because I would have stayed. I was very loyal to that company and I never really foreshadowed that that was going to happen. I thought we were good. And so
Mm.
when it did happen, it was a shock. But then fast forward, not even a year probably, I was advancing in the company that I had gone to work for after them and doing well. And I had increased my salary at least, a little bit. Had I stayed with them, my salary would have been increasing at a minimal pace because of that annual increase, right? That your normal
Right.
raise that you get every year. I was able to negotiate better, a vacation. I was able to get actually a little extra vacation. Had I stayed with them, I would have just got whatever they were going to give me incrementally each year. I was able to look back and go, that was actually a gift because if
Yeah.
they hadn't let me go, I would have stayed. Not that that was a bad thing. I loved that company. But I recognized that because they forced me out the door, I was able to catapult my career. And it wasn't just the company that I worked for after them, it was all the companies that sort of followed. That experience, that 10 years that they gave me under my belt of experience is what made me appealing to other companies. So
Mm.
they were willing to pay me more for that. And I was too naive to know because I got that job when I was 19. And so that's
Ah,
when I started
yeah.
my investigative career was at 19. And so I was just doing, like I said, what I had been taught and told, which is get a job, work hard, be loyal, and they'll be loyal to you. There was an awakening that happened within that of like, oh, that's actually not true. They're not loyal to you.
Right.
It was a gift for me in the end that it
Yeah.
allowed me to progress. It gave me more courage later to make the move before maybe they eliminated me. So not that I wasn't loyal, but I was more aware and more willing to make moves, power moves, if you will, to go to other companies, make sure that I was on the top of the list for talent, making sure that I was appealing to other employers and recognizing that moving around wasn't a bad thing. Like they had have me believing before that was a bad thing. Jumping jobs was a negative. And
Oh,
even
right.
when I was interviewing, because I was in leadership, I had other investigators working for me. That was information shared with me by other leaders, which is, when you're looking at a resume and you're looking at their work history, do they bounce around a lot? Have they jumped employers a lot? That was a negative thing. And then I learned later on that that isn't necessarily a negative thing if they're leaving for a better role.
Right.
But they
Yeah.
had taught me in that process of, applicants and whatnot to look for people that jump jobs. So I didn't do that because I was afraid it would be a negative for me. If you can justify the move, you can justify making the leap to another role, whether it be financially or for more responsibility, or even if it's a lateral, but it makes sense for your long-term goals, go for it. Do it. That is never going to be a negative move.
If only we could have a little taste of that perspective, right? That only sometimes time and experience can give us. The fact that you can look back on that now and say that was a gift, and I'm sure going through it was a different story. And I'm just curious to know, is there anything that you learned in your experience as an investigator or, your career in law enforcement that you still utilize today, whether it's in your personal or professional life, that maybe is a bit of a surprise to you that you still use that skill?
I use all of them, for the most, except I don't put people in jail anymore. But I still use a lot of it. I've always been like, even when I remember being like young, I loved reading Nancy Drew books, and like I was into mystery. When I was first got my first investigator job, I didn't know I was going to end up being an investigator. So I started off just catching shoplifters like that. I thought I wanted to be a cop, and my high school sweetheart wanted to be a cop. I chose to, we had our child young, so I chose to take a back seat and let him pursue his career in law enforcement. And we had had a discussion. We didn't think it was a good idea, since we were so young and had a child so young, for him to have two parents that were both law enforcement officers. So I chose not to pursue a career in like being a police officer, and let him do that instead. And so when I got that job at 19 catching shoplifters, it was like the closest for me that I could get to being in law enforcement without being in law enforcement. And I get to go to court, and I get to, and so that was good for me. And I never thought it would turn into like being an investigator, a corporate investigator doing organized crime cases and things like that. I never, that was never something I foreshadowed. But what I recognized that when I got that job catching shoplifters is they started having me like analyze some reports and stuff. Like I didn't know what all I was getting into, the internal side of investigating, which is like looking for refund fraud and credit card fraud and so like that. And so I realized that I was really good at piecing puzzles together. Like my brain, the way my brain analyzes stuff, it was just like I could see the bigger picture, and I would look for the like pieces of the puzzle. And I still am like that today. And I think that's just how my brain works. So I'm always analyzing. I go down the rabbit hole very, very easily because my brain needs to know. I need to understand. It wasn't until recently that this probably became aware to me. We were in Atlantic City. I told you I'm on tour, and so we were in Atlantic City a few weeks ago. And one of the guys, the guy that hosts our comedy show, what he pointed out, and he did later, we were walking down Atlantic City, the boardwalk, is that my head's like on a swivel. Like I'm hyper vigilant. I'm very aware all the time of everything that's going on around me. And that I'm aware of that, but I wasn't so aware that other people were aware of it. He was like, I don't have any of that. He's like, is that like how you grew up? And I was like, no, I mean, maybe part of it was that. Most of it was probably my job. Still very hyper aware, and very analytical. Still use a lot of the, if somebody calls me, I got friends that still call me and go, hey, I need you to check into something for me. Can you, can you get any information or any dirt on such and such? I still know how to go and dig information up. And I enjoy that. I do miss the hunt, like the investigative part of it. So I still try to keep that part of my brain sharp, I guess.
Yeah.
Because if you don't use it, you lose it. And menopause will do that to you anyway. Like you wake up one day in menopause and you're just dumber. You forget words are hard. You forget words.
I'll just do a lot of pointing when I'm in menopause. This and that.
Well, perimenopause does it too. It started in perimenopause, and I didn't know it was perimenopause, like I said, because nobody talked about it. I want to know what the part of my brain that used to store phone numbers is doing.
Still don't know my husband's phone number by heart. It's just, I don't need to. I just don't need to because it's just in my phone and I can press a button. I'm screwed.
I don't have to memorize phone numbers because you used to call people on a payphone.
We are very dependent on our phone. I would love your perspective on, the narratives around being in mid-age and making different choices in mid-age, right? We hear like it's harder to make friends. It's harder to start a new relationship. It's harder to move. It's harder to, make a pivot in your career. Now that you're about 10 years deep into this, do you believe that? Or do you think that those narratives should change? What has been your experience and the experience of those around you who are making, similar moves or pivots?
I used to believe that.
Mm,
If I hadn't lived the last 10 years the way that I have, really the last 5 years have been like crazy, like how much change has happened in the last 5 years of my life. I used to believe that. I followed that narrative. I had that idea in my head of what old looked like. I had that idea in my head of like when you turn 50, all the marketing, just think of media, all
right.
the marketing around over the hill, everything's in black and like there's rest in peace signs and there's like all this stupid stuff that implies that after you turn 50 that everything is downhill and the end is near. Okay, so
Mhm.
turning 50 for me was really scary. Like I really, I was obsessed with the idea of turning 50. It scared me to death because you become more, I think I became more aware of my mortality at
Yeah.
that point because of marketing. And then you look back at like old TV shows from, the 80s and you look at like those people in like Golden Girls and the Archie Bunker show and things like they were younger than I am
Yeah.
when they filmed those shows and they look so old. So that was the media that I was digesting of like, this
Right.
is what old looks like. And that life, you're supposed to kick back and just wait for, the Grim Reaper to show up. And what I realize is that that is not true. You're never too old to reinvent yourself. You're never too old to start a new hobby, a new career, start your own business. I think that everybody looks at, especially because a lot of the content that I make is around middle age and aging. And I talk a little bit about, this perception of what old looks like
Mm.
and getting that, erasing that out of your brain because, well, people are like, oh, what is it about, Gen X and the millennials? They're aging like backwards. Why do they look so much younger than people that were in their 50s back in the, 80s and the 90s? There's a few things. We did live, not that life is not hard now. I just think hard labor, not necessarily, there's a lot of really fucked up shit going on in the world that's
Yeah.
made this place a hard place to live. So I don't mean it in that respect of like mentally or emotionally. I'm talking like physically. They were out doing a lot more manual labor. I think that ages you. I think they also didn't have the media that we have in our face constantly that's showing us what you can look like what we now have all this skincare and they skincare and clothing and hair care and all the social media and it's like, oh, they didn't have like a doorway into anybody else's world, right? They
Yeah.
only had the doorway into their own, and so they were only modeling what they saw around them, which would be their parents, their grandparents, their neighbors, whatever. We have this doorway into, in this mirror into worlds all over the world. Social
Yeah.
media has opened that door for us. I think that's happened gradually over the last 10, 15 years of like, oh, we're changing that perception because there are people giving us permission to not be that we can age and still look young and act young, that not only was it how they looked but it was how they acted at that time. I think about my parents and my grandparents when they were in their 50s. They acted old.
Mm.
I mean, people are like, "You need to act your age." And I'm like, "What does that mean exactly?" Like, what? I've never been this age. How am I supposed to act? Like, I don't know. What does that mean? So that narrative that you're talking about,
Mm.
act your age. I get a lot of shit for my tattoos and my blue hair. So, because I like to put bright color, they're like, "Oh, why are you trying to act young?" But why, who says that that is young? Who
Right.
defines what that rule is that says only young people can have colored hair or only young people can have tattoos? Who defined that narrative? And why does that rule apply? And so it's like it's going back to what you're talking about. Does the narrative need to change? Absolutely. And I think we're slowly changing that narrative, but it takes a collective to do it. Because if, a few people, then they just look like rebels, right? They just look like, and we look like, and I get called a feminist all the time. Feminist is just a label that they give women they can't control.
I
That's what
love that.
it's chipping away at what aging looks like, because ageism is alive and well. But ageism, I really believe, is something that is taught. Again, we were taught that when you hit a certain age, you have to behave a certain way, you have to act a certain way, you have to dress a certain way. You basically just sit around and wait to die.
Yeah.
And now here I am going to be 53, and I'm like, I reject every ounce of that. I will age the way I want to. I will color my hair whatever I want to. I'll wear whatever I want to. I'll say what I want to. And that makes people uncomfortable. That's why the narrative
Mm.
hasn't changed completely, but we are slowly chipping away at it. A lot of what makes a narrative difficult to change is the resistance to it. And
Mm.
there are still a lot of people that are resistant to that change of like, you're 50, go be a grandma. I'm like, I don't even have grandkids. What the fuck are you talking about? I still have 11 and 14-year-old girls at home. They also think once you hit 50 that you're retired.
Right.
Like, do you know that I still by legal by the federal guidelines, I can't legally retire until I'm 67.
Mm.
I still have I can't even retire yet. Like because it used to be 62, then it was 65,
Right. They keep
67.
increasing it. Yes.
Because they basically want you to work until you die. Your parents, grandparents, or other adult models around you, the idea of retiring was something that was just not really they had that when they had pensions and they worked 30 years and they could retire,
Right.
but we don't have that anymore. And so I always just watching them and seeing as the world was changing was I just believed since I was probably in my 20s, I'm going to work until I die. And so Gen X, my generation, no different than millennials or the Gen Z, like this idea all of us have that we're going to work until forever is a real fear because we haven't exactly had everything line up for us so perfectly where it's like, oh, you can build a little nest egg and you can have a retirement plan and you can retire comfortably and draw Social Security. I don't even know if that, but by the time I'm able to retire 14 years from now,
Yeah.
if I could retire at that age, my biggest fear is there won't be any Social Security left. There's not going to
Right.
be anything. So it's like that idea of like, I don't really think I will retire. I probably will retire when they put me in the ground. That's
Mm.
the definition of retirement. And I think unfortunately for a lot of young people, that is a reality. And it's one I hate because I know it's for my age demographic, it's a big fear. And so I'm like, if I'm afraid of that and it's only 14 years away, I can't imagine what the people that have 20 and 30 and 40 years of their life still left to work, what their fear looks like.
Mm.
Because we aren't in a position where, they're like, oh, well, put all your money in your retirement plan. If you can afford that, if you can afford to put as
Yeah.
much as you can, most people can't afford to do that. And so there's just, that there's a lot of things that need to change around not just aging, but what it means to age, what life looks like when you age. Looking at the fact that I could by technicality retire at that age. I think is when you stop dreaming, then I think the end will be near, and
Mm.
stop imagining a life in the future, then the end is near. And so I just keep dreaming and I keep moving and I keep doing. And I feel like if I stopped at this point, my joints will probably seize up like the Tin Man and the Wizard. So that's another good reason to keep moving.
It's a great reminder that the saying that people will reach for the closest or the best example that they're shown, and how the internet and social media has just expanded the
Yes.
variety of examples and possibilities that are out there, which can be overwhelming, but also really liberating
Yeah, you can't
as
believe
well.
everything on the internet.
Totally. Yes. And I selfishly want to ask you a question. I'm 35 and I'm curious about what maybe you thought would be true for yourself forever at my age, at 35, that you have found at 52 is no longer true for you. Like, what's something that you just took at face value in your 30s that you don't feel that way anymore?
I told you I really struggled with turning 50. Like,
Yeah.
I really thought that that was like the defining moment where life was going to just come crumbling down and I was just going to start falling apart. Now, don't get me wrong, some things do start to fall apart, but not all of it's in a bad way. I think at 35, the idea of 50 seems so far away to me.
Yeah.
And I, if I'm really honest, and I think this is a lot, this probably plagues a lot of my generation. Um, Being latchkey kids, and we've been working since we were young, very, very young. Some of us had jobs at 10 and 12, paper routes and babysit.
Yes. My dad, yeah, talks about
We were
working at
working
13.
forever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they joke we were 30 at the age of 12. and now at 50, we're still 30 because we just emotionally, and I think we were somewhat stunted. But I, I think about the fact that I worked all that time and how hard we lived. Like we not only were latchkey kids, we were kind of on our own for the most part. And a lot of us shouldn't even be here. Well, I mean, the crazy dumb shit that we did unsupervised, we had no supervision.
Mm.
There was a commercial reminding our parents that they had children that
Oh
said,
my.
it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your kids are?
Holy
Because
shit.
we were feral. And being honest with myself, I really didn't plan to live that long. And I don't think a lot of us thought we would even live that long. And so
Wow.
I never really looked at 50. So when 50 came into my, my sphere of like reality, I was
Yeah.
like, I didn't really plan to do this. I don't have a plan. I didn't think I'd live this long.
Wow.
And I think because we felt so much older at such a young age, and you could look back at pictures of us, like and you look back at pictures in the 80s of people in high school and how they looked so old. Uh,
Mm.
we were just a lot more mature, if you will, for our age. So now at this point, I think what has been stripped away from me, because in my 30s, I was doing all the things I thought I was supposed to be doing. I was working, I was grinding in my job, trying to, work hard to get ahead, get the next promotion, always climbing ladder, never satisfied with where I was. That grind never allowed me to really pause and realize that I was already working so hard and so much at that point in my life that I couldn't pause to think about, what life would be like at 50.
Mm.
Like I just like I said, everything's a blur. I wasn't even thinking about it. It wasn't even in my in my brain, in my thought process. And so now at 52, when I hit 50, and that illusion or that mirage, of like what 50 was supposed to be, it was none of that for me personally. It was like as things started to fall apart, they fell into place because I finally, I was like letting go of a lot of that narrative that you're talking about, letting go of a lot of like your give a damn meter is going to be completely busted by next.
Oh, I can't wait.
So when your give a damn is busted, and I hit 50, I started really kind of taking inventory of my life in a way that I never had. And so looking back at 35, that belief that you had to work hard, work hard, less play hard. It was work hard. And that was the definition of success. And then for women, it's even harder because you have to mother and be a spouse, and you basically work 2 or 3 jobs.
Mm.
Typically, as a woman, if you have kids, you're married, you work a full-time job, you go to work all day and work, for somebody else, and then come home and you do all this work at home as well. So there's like never really, we sacrifice so much of ourselves. And so getting to 50, and I started taking inventory of my life, I realized that there was a lot of that stuff I could let go of. That narrative no longer really fit me. I didn't want that mold, that box that I had contorted myself to fit into all my life, the good girl, if you will.
Mm.
Um, I was like, you know what? I done none of that serves me anymore. And so I just started throwing that shit out. And that's where, so yeah, I might have joint pain. I might forget words. But as that stuff fell apart, other things fell into place, which is sort of this space of like, I like me finally. And I know who I am. I didn't for so long. I just let motherhood and my job be my identity. And so
Yeah.
now I'm like, now I know who I am. And that is what probably one of the best parts of midlife. And maybe it took me, some people I think get there sooner than I did. I didn't get there till I was like 50. But
Mhm.
some women, maybe when they hit perimenopause, their give a damn hit the brakes quicker than mine did. Because there's a lot of things that are going to go by the wayside. But if I could off all that baggage and all of somebody else's expectations, all of society's expectations, and landing at this space and going, you know what? I don't give a fuck about your rules anymore. That's one of the biggest parts of, I think, I didn't see coming. I thought
Mm.
at 35, what you're asking me about 35, all those beliefs that I had, I thought I would carry those with me my entire life. But
Yes.
then you get to
Yeah.
a point where you start stripping those away and you realize you're like, those really aren't my beliefs at my core that served me, but did it really serve me or did it serve everybody else? And so you start to let go of a lot of that. You just feel lighter. And like I said, for me it was 50. I think some women maybe get there later, or maybe unfortunately maybe never get there. But I have a lot of women that follow me. 80% of my demographics, my audience that follows me are female, and they range anywhere from your age, 30 even, up to 70, 75. And I get women in my comments in their 70s that'll say, I didn't get there until I was in my 60s, or I didn't get there until
Wow.
I was in my 70s. And that's sad for, I really, that's sad for some women that they don't get there sooner. But menopause and perimenopause will definitely put it on you.
I so appreciate you sharing that with me. Thank you. Like that's
Yeah.
going to give me a lot to think about. And I heard you mention that you had your first child at 17, right? You had married your high school sweetheart, a man, and I know that you have been with your wife for a long time.
20 years
So
this year.
20 years, congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, when you in your first marriage, did you have the awareness that you would also be open to being with a woman at that point? Is that something that you discovered later on?
No, that was, I didn't, that also was not on my bingo card.
Yeah.
Um, I was with my high school sweetheart, and we were together until my son was about 8 years old. And, y- you know, uh, I didn't see it coming. It came kind of out of nowhere. I had always considered myself to be, I used to joke, I'm strictly dickly. That's what I used to. Um, but yeah, the opportunity was there, and I I realized, I think, that it was less for me about whether it was a man or a woman. It's more about the person and their heart. And I realized that I was like, oh, okay, it was different. But that I fully enjoyed sort of this experience that I hadn't had with Tony, my ex-husband, which was this sort of um, emotional connection we had, but not to that depth. And then
Mm,
there was something about that that really was just again, like an awakening of like, oh, I didn't even know that you could feel like that, or that you would feel about another person that way, and have that kind of deep connection. Like Tony and I had a connection, but it was not to that depth. And so that was my first girlfriend, and her and I were together for, I don't know, 6 years or so, close to 7 years. And when we separated, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, I don't know where I go from here. I had been straight that was that purely accidental. So I was like, I don't know if I go back to dating men, or do I date women? Like, I didn't know who I was at the time.
yeah.
I really didn't. I was like, I don't know where I haven't dated anybody but her for the last almost 7 years. And before that, I had only ever been with men. And, um, and so I was confused, if you will.
Yeah.
And I just made the decision at the time. I was like, you know what? I'm open to either. And
Yeah.
whoever comes along first, I'll give that my all. And that's when I met Krista. And I was working in Detroit as an investigator up there, and she lived in Michigan, and I met her. And she's 7 years younger than me, and she was completely like not anything I ever would have even imagined that would come into my world. She was 26 at the time, playing rugby in Detroit. She was a college athlete, had played volleyball, and like, she just was full of life. And here we are 20 years later. I did not imagine I would spend 20 years, but she's my best friend. And we've had two kids together, and we moved a couple states together. And yeah, and I'm at the point where if something happened between her and I think I'm open to whatever comes along. Like,
Yeah.
I don't label myself. I really hate labels. I
Yeah.
really despise them. I don't really go around calling myself a lesbian or a bisexual or straight, because when I was straight, I didn't go around calling myself straight. have that conversation. I didn't need to have that conversation. It was, again, this is the norm, if you will. This is what normal looks like. Normal, again, what the hell is that? Um,
Yeah.
for me, it was, I didn't walk around labeling myself that way. I had never talked about being strictly dickly until I met my first girlfriend. When she approached me. And so I was like, oh, yeah, no, I've always only been with men. And she didn't care about that. So, uh, and obviously it worked out for her. But yeah, no, I didn't call myself straight then. And I think now, if anything happened, which I don't anticipate it ever would, but if it did, I still wouldn't sit here and label myself anything. I am open to the experience, the human experience, and whether that would be a guy or a girl, I don't really care.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach.
Labels aren't for the person you're labeling.
Yeah,
They're for you, so that you can put things into little boxes to make you feel good, right? Like
yeah,
that's how humans are. We need to compartmentalize and put things in their places and put labels on them so that we know where they are, and what level they make us comfortable or uncomfortable. And
right.
so for me personally, I don't like them because I don't need to label. For me, I don't need to label myself. Other people do. I mean, they're like, oh, you're a lesbian. And I'm like, if that's what you need to call me, sure. I'm just another
Mm.
person like you. And I happen to spend my life with another woman. So what? Um, we built an amazing life together, and she's an incredible human being. And that's what I want in my life, is just somebody that's a good person. And
Yeah.
so, but yeah, labels are something that other people need for whatever that makes them feel better.
Yes. Amen to that. I would love to ask about, this career trajectory that you're on now. I think a lot of people might be overwhelmed by all the cool stuff that you're doing now, right? What were your first steps like? Like if you can remember, the first thing that you did for your boutique, the first post that you made, what was going through your mind? What did that look like? Because
Oh
people
God.
can forget that you have to start somewhere, and where you start, it might not be where you end up,
Yeah.
and just being open to whatever that looks like and whatever comes next. Anything that you wanna share around that?
Oh, it's funny that I have the following that I have now, because when I look back at when I started, so first of all, when I started, there was really just Facebook. Instagram was
Okay.
kind of newer at the time. Um, there was, less social media than there is now. Facebook was sort of the big heavy hitter, if you will. Twitter existed, but whatever, I didn't do anything on that. I remember starting out, and my boutique is online. It's always been online.
Mm.
And I started out live selling. So going live on Facebook and selling my products, because at the time I didn't have like a Shopify store, which I have now. I didn't have that. I didn't have like a place for you to go and land. So Chris and we were selling clothes through Facebook Live. And I would make posts, about, we started a group, which we still have, but we started a group because that was all you knew to like get people to join, that maybe that's where you would go live in your group. And I remember I would make posts and they did nothing. And I was like, this is stupid. I would put something on Instagram and it would have like no views or one view. And I was like, this is a waste of my time. This is stupid. And I did. At the time, for many years, actually, I hated making social media posts because I didn't understand. I was like, I don't understand this. Like, what is the point of social media if I make a post and nobody ever sees it? The only people that are going to see it are people that know me, and they don't even see it. And it hasn't changed. You can still post something and
Yeah.
your friends might see it. They might not see it, whatever. But it felt like such a waste of my time, because I was like, this is stupid. I'm taking all these pictures and posting all this stuff and trying to get people excited, and nobody even sees the damn thing. And so for a while, I just stopped. I didn't even want to do that. I would just go live. I was like, I'm just going to go live, because at the time Facebook was pushing lives. It was new. And so
Yeah.
they would push that out. It would push that out to people, but it wouldn't push my post. And it was very annoying and frustrating to me. And I felt like Instagram, I tried so hard at Instagram then, which at the time, Instagram was just still photos, nothing else. It was just pictures.
Yeah.
And I remember trying so hard to mimic what I saw people doing on Instagram, because Instagram at the time was this perfectly curated, picture of what life is, I just couldn't capture that. I was like, I first of all, I pride myself on my integrity and my honesty and my authenticity. And I felt so out of like my element of like, this feels so fake. Fast forward, I'm
Yeah.
like, because it is fake. So much of that is so fake. Like, when you peel back the curtain and you look behind the curtain, the people's lives don't look like that.
Right.
When I decided that I was just going to be me and stop trying to be what, because again, I told you the way my brain works. I overanalyze everything. I am a critical overthinker. I'm over analytical, and I will go down every rabbit hole trying to dissect and figure out the blueprint for how something works, right? So I had done all that and I couldn't crack the code. I was like, this is stupid. I don't understand it. So when I stopped doing all that, and when I first really got on social media as the real Slim Sherry, which is my content creation world is under the real Slim Sherry, and video was obviously dominating then, so that made it easier because it is a lot harder to be you and feel authentic and feel honest and feel genuine in text. It's a lot harder to do.
Yeah.
People can't really get to know you unless they read your stuff all the time. With video, it changed everything because it's like, oh, I can just press record and I'm just going to be me. And that was the code cracker for me. When I first started making content, I didn't think anybody was going to watch it. I really was just making it for me. I thought initially I would use it for my business,
Yeah.
and it just never turned into that. I don't know. I was trying to learn the technology. I wanted to understand it first. Again, the overthinker. Understand it before I would start putting out anything that was for my business, right? Like I was like, I got to know how this works before I do that because I didn't want to put my business at risk. So that's why I
Yeah.
started like my own personal account and started making videos. And when I started making videos and I was just me, just a head talking in the screen, being honest, not curating myself, that resonated with people. It wasn't dance trends. It wasn't
Right.
perfectly curated, Instagram feeds. It was none of that. It
Yeah.
was, I connected with people because they could relate to what I was saying. If anybody that wants to do that or get started or wants to understand how to crack that code, it's whatever niche you're in, is just be relatable. Your job is not to find your audience, they will find you. And so that when in the boutique space, I didn't know that then. I didn't know, like, I was just putting something out there to the entire world, hoping that maybe somebody would see it that was interested. I was going about it all wrong because it was all text, it was all just pictures. People don't really get to know you. They don't know what you're about. They don't feel, for me, my audience feels they not only relate, but now I've built over time a lot of trust with them. And so they trust me, and they trust that I'm going to show up. I show up every day. I make content every day. Be relatable. You don't even have to be consistent. 'Cause people are like, oh, you have to post every day. You got to post 5 times a day. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's not real. I did that in the beginning. It doesn't make a difference. Just the quality over quantity. Be real, and people, they'll find you. Whoever's meant to find you will find you. And so yeah, like looking back at how it was in the beginning versus now, I mean, I hated social media then. But as how it helped my business, was to fast forward to where I'm at now. So a couple
Yeah.
of years ago, so it's been almost 2 years now that my company Wholesome Hippie went viral on TikTok, and that was on our Wholesome Hippie account. But what I had to learn, what I figured out, because I have great products, and it was like, I'm gonna, I've got my business accounts, and I get people that are like, I just wish you would just keep making funny videos, and I'm like, this is my business account. Like, I'm allowed to make content about my business on my business account. But I think that the algorithm, because I do show up consistently, and I am a larger creator on the platform. It recognizes my face, and so it did push my business videos out, I think, to people that know me. And then a lot of what happened was, I didn't know you owned a business. They had no idea because I never made my social media account about my business. So there were so many that were like, I had no idea that you even owned a company. And that I think helped me. It helped for TikTok was like, here, they like your face. We'll show them your business. Moral of that story is all my original reason for creating video content was for my business, and it never was that. And then finally, a couple years later, it actually did help me finally, even though it was totally by accident. I consistently post almost every single day on my personal account, but my business, I'm less frequent about it. I feel like I'm juggling too many balls most of the time.
What you said about just authenticity, being yourself, being honest is such great advice, not even just entrepreneurial advice, but life advice too, is you will attract the right people, the people for you into your life when you are honest about who you are. And you'll also be drawn to the things that make sense for you if you are honest about what you're actually interested in or actually what you want to do. And that is just a great message all around. Talking to you makes me excited for my 50s and beyond. And I feel like that needs to be the norm.
Life does get better as you age. When I got done with my 40s, I remember looking back because I was just 50, thinking my 40s was the best decade I'd ever had. It was although I went through, I looking back, there's a lot of shit, but I still was like it felt like the best decade I'd had of my life so far. But now in my 50s, I'm like, my 40s will have nothing on my 50s. Like
That's
my 50s are going to be great. Do everything. Life is so short. Do not waste a moment of it living in the past or worrying too much about the future. Just live it in the now. You can do incredible things no matter how old you are.
This was so much fun. Thank you for the
Oh,
conversation.
Thank you so much
it.
for the conversation.
I would love to give you a chance to, whatever, what you want to leave people with, and then where people can find you, your work, all that good stuff.
Anybody out there listening, get out of your head at the idea that you can't do hard things. The overcritical voices in our head will hold us back a lot in life. So if you can get past that and get past the idea that you can't do hard things, you can. And that you're never too late, you're never too old, and you're never too washed up to reinvent yourself. And I think the best advice I have is always be paying attention to what's happening around you so that you are able to pivot when the time comes. So it's having the gift of being able to foreshadow the need to pivot, especially if you're an entrepreneur. But this really goes with jobs. And I think back to that job I was talking about, that 10-year job, not really seeing it coming. I look back now, I'm like, oh, there were signs. So it's just paying attention and being aware, especially if you're an entrepreneur. A lot of entrepreneurs don't make it because they don't see it coming. They don't see change. Don't be afraid to change. We get so stubborn and so set in our ways, and we dig our heels in, and the unwillingness to change holds us back. And so, you're never too old, never too late, and never too washed up to try something new. You can go to therealslimsherry.com. All my links are there. I'm on all the social platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Threads. I'm all over the place. And then my companies, Wholesome Hippie, my skincare company, wholesomehippie.com. We make all natural wellness beauty products made right here in the state of Georgia. Small batch. And we make a lot of wellness products that just help people deal with anxiety and stress and pain management, things all drug-free. And then I own a Feather and Vine boutique. And so also you can go to, you can just search Wholesome Hippie or Feather and Vine, and both of them would come up. But and then my tour we are already booking out into next year. So anybody that is 40 and up, this is like a comedy meets variety show, very nostalgic, lots of stories about how we grew up. And, it's kind of like Gen X therapy. It's called the Gen X Takeover. Check it out. It's a good time.
Thanks for hanging out with Self-Helpless. Feel free to share this with someone who could use it, and you can binge related conversations linked in the show notes. Ad-free episodes are now available on Patreon, and because I'm practically allergic to social media, the best way to get notified about new episodes is to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or join the email list at selfhelplesspodcast.com, where you will also find some free goodies like a watch and read list and the quote buffet. All right, love you big time, and thank you so much.